Constitutionalist episode 25, and today we have something a little different for you. If you're listening to this on audio, we're trying a video component for the first time, so be sure to check the description for a link to this video on YouTube. Today we're doing something which I believe David Bridge brought up when we had him on a previous episode. That is a presidential fantasy draft, something he does with his students. And so we have five of us here: Ben, myself, Jordan Cash, and David Bridge, who are previous guests on the Constitutionalist. In addition, we have Dr. Curt Nichols, associate professor at Baylor University, a West Point graduate who completed his PhD at UT Austin. Dr. Nichols' work focuses on the executive and presidential politics, which will, of course, be fitting for today. So, Dr. Nichols, thank you for coming on. I don't think we've ever done this many guests at once, and we have a full house in terms of Baylor political science representation. So thanks for coming on, everybody. I thought I'd start maybe, David, I know you mentioned this on a previous episode that you do a presidential fantasy draft with your students. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about what that looks like and maybe why you started doing that.
So like everybody on the podcast here, I'm really a fan of American political development, political history, and how political science can inform that. And I wanted to get my students excited about it. And so I came up with this idea of a presidential fantasy draft where they draft different presidents. And what I do is they each draft 7 or I think 8 presidents each, and then they submit their teams, and they're judged on a few different categories. And I send it out to presidential experts. So I think Jordan and Curt have graded presidential drafts for me. I think, Jordan, you did the overall category. And Curt is always my go-to man for party managers. So which team has the best party managers? And those are a couple of the categories. There's also like foreign policy appointments. But it gets them excited to just read about different administrations that they otherwise wouldn't read about.
And so it sounds like, are there different metrics? Like, do they do multiple draft orderings for different metrics, like picking different ends in mind in terms of how they're selecting?
Yeah, it's a little complicated. So you have a team of 8, and all 8 are submitted for the overall category, but then there's 4 other categories, and you have to choose each of your presidents for 2 categories. So there's, let me think if I can remember, foreign policy, appointments, party manager, and scandal. So where scandal is actually a good thing. So this is where, like, Richard Nixon is a high draft pick, and I throw that in there so that they have to read about some of the presidents who are a little lower in the rankings. And they might think about choosing some presidents that maybe today aren't going to get drafted even.
Yeah, well, it would have been prudent for me to reach out to you and find out how you do this. I think Ben and I are kind of winging this. It'll be a little bit looser. I think we'll just jump in and kind of have fun. We're going, we have an order set out by middle name, which I won't reveal on the podcast. We'll keep that a mystery. But Ben, I guess let's start with you. You're number 1, and we'll go through this order and then back through the other way continuously until each of us have 7.
All right. Well, I'll reveal my middle name is Adams. Actually, I'm related to the John Adams and John Quincy Adams. So that's anyway. The first president I'll take, I can't take anyone other than Lincoln. I have a shrine to him in my office, and I remember one of the first classes I ever taught, my students kept a Lincoln timer. That is how quickly I made a reference to Abraham Lincoln in class. So it would be impossible for me not to take Lincoln. And, I feel like it looks like I rigged the rules, given that I knew my middle name was Adams, and that Lincoln is but I didn't. If Shane came up with the rules, so
I was gonna hit you up for a trade if I went first there, Ben. I was gonna offer you, swap your first round and maybe give me a second and a third round, just because I knew you'd go for you like that lanky guy out of Illinois. So yeah, good
I've
first
got a
round
whole
choice.
Bookcase and a whole bunch of busts and things like that of Lincoln. So well, that would be fun. We could start trading. We could trade as we go. I'll give you Lincoln for 2.
That would be fun. It might get complicated quick.
I think that'll get complicated.
I'm entirely unsurprised, as I'm sure most of us are, or all of us. I am going to take, actually, he was mentioned already. I'm going to take Richard Nixon, avowed anti-communist, a lot of great quotes that are far too inappropriate to repeat on this podcast, and a burning hatred for the intelligence communities. So, and I just think 10 out of 10 in terms of entertainment value. So obviously, like I said, we might all approach these with different metrics in terms of our picks, but that's going to be mine.
That's a zag, Shane. Wow.
Wow, that is, man.
Nixon first. Holy cow.
I mean, some people would say reaching on that one, but
What
I mean,
a zag.
everybody's upset about the Falcons taking Michael Penix, but here's Shane taking Nixon, number 2 overall. Like,
you probably could have got him in the 5th round. I
I
mean,
know that's a wait. I'm pretty sure.
I was worried. I don't know. I didn't want to lose him.
I feel like we need like Mel Kiper on right now. Richard Nixon, okay president, maybe not the best. Round 1, wouldn't have done that.
Shane sees a lot of development opportunity with Nixon. That's what he's planning for.
All right, so Bridge, what do you got?
Wow, that's unexpected. I really have a couple choices here, but man, I think with Washington on board, I'm going to have to take Washington.
Okay.
Just kind of set the stage for Article 2 and everything that branch does. Probably the most influential on actual presidential powers.
I think that's fair. It's a great choice. Cash, what do you got?
So I'll round out the traditional top 3 with FDR, only president to win 4 terms, a lot of foreign policy accomplishments, very successful in getting his initiatives through Congress, which is one of my metrics, is about success. So FDR, one of the more successful presidents in being able to lead his party, get things through Congress, and just his policy accomplishments, both in domestic and foreign policy, like Washington and Lincoln, really sets a standard for especially modern presidents in the 20th and 21st century. So not a surprising pick, but a solid one, I think.
No, I am a little surprised. I wasn't sure where people would land on FDR, you know what I mean? Obviously, he's high up in the accomplishment and greatness scale, but, a lot of baggage, especially with more conservatively disposed.
Shane leans QAnon, so.
How about this, Curt? If you had that 4th pick, would you have taken FDR right there?
I think since this is a quarterback-driven league, I think you have to go with those guys who have a proven track record of transformation and energetic leadership. This isn't an old running back era anymore. So you gotta go with what wins games. And I think. Can I go? I'm going to go with Teddy Roosevelt next. So I'm going to go with the cousin, not necessarily because he's my favorite president or anything, but I think if you have to have a guy that think about energetic and not afraid to get things done. If you gave this guy a good war or depression to deal with, he might he's usually a top 5 president anyway, so it's not too much of a reach, but maybe an unconventional one for this group. I don't know.
It's a shame he never got his crisis.
He said so himself.
Yeah. All right, Ben, round 2. What do you got?
Oh, wait, we circle back to Curt?
No, we circle back.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So
Nichols
does it go? Yeah, Nichols. Okay.
Oh, okay. I thought I was a Super Bowl champion last year, and I was always going to go 5th. That's good. All right. Well, I hadn't thought about who to follow up Teddy with. I'm gonna follow up with a controversial pick. His reputation might be a little haggard these days, but I'm going with Andrew Jackson. I gotta get me a old backwoodsman there. Talking about party politics and things like that, and creating the first real political party, Big D Democrats. Just a feisty guy. I think any huddle that has Jackson and Teddy Roosevelt in it, there could be a fight breaking out at any moment, and it's too fun for me to not pick Andrew Jackson, even though he's got some things on his record these days that have caused his stock to go down. That's for sure.
I think that's a fine choice.
Nichols could kick all our. He's the most manly president now.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he's got.
That's my
You know what,
criteria.
though? Richard Nixon would fight dirty, though. You know?
Oh yeah, you would.
Like,
You know he would.
And Lincoln does have the height, you know.
Well, there are. I mean, I don't
long
know.
reach.
Gerald
Wasn't
Ford's
they-
still out there, you know?
Wasn't
Yeah.
Lincoln champion or something?
Yeah, there's all these anecdotes about Lincoln having like incredible strength. Like he used to
Yeah.
go out in front of the soldiers and hold the axe out for like a very
Yeah.
long time, and I don't know.
Well, there's a story of him grabbing a thing of big thing of beer and drinking it down. You know, it's like a barrel of beer.
Reputation
That's
has
why you
gone up.
drafted him, Ben? Are
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
drafting based on drunkenness?
I'm just drunkenness. That's where I'm at. Next comes Grant.
Okay, Cash, what do you got?
I'll take another guy who I'll continue this guys whose reputation's probably gone down in recent years, but who still are, I think, pretty good presidents. I'll take Thomas Jefferson.
I was actually wondering, you know, when you've had some interesting picks so far, because it seems like everybody hates Jefferson. Like there's something to find, whether you're on the left or the right. But in terms of impact as a founder, but also, yeah. Well, why do you
Yeah,
what drives
so
you to Jefferson as a
you
pick?
bring up a good point. Whenever I bring up Jefferson in our circles, it tends to be what a horrible human being and political thinker. But I think he's got, especially as a president, again, we go back to party management. I don't think anybody dominated his party quite like Jefferson did. He's got massive majorities in Congress, probably controls Congress more than any other president in history, really, through his party leadership. He is so dominant that his party, becomes a one-party system, right? The Federalists fade out not long after his presidency. His party doesn't lose an election until, really.
I have a question for Jordan. What do you and for the panel more generally? What do we think about prior activities or post activities, for that matter, of presidents? This is something I think about when I think about, is it fair that we give credit Jefferson for writing the Declaration of Independence when we're thinking about these things, or should we restrict ourselves completely to the 4 or 8 years that they're in office?
I didn't use the Declaration in my calculation for picking Jefferson. I was trying to be solely on his 8 years, and maybe to the extent that he sets a legacy or has impact afterwards. That's what I consider, but not necessarily Jefferson post or pre.
So you're picking him purely on the unconstitutionality and oppression of the Embargo Act.
He also had the Louisiana Purchase. There is that.
Yeah, that's huge.
Gosh, you're going progressive. Roosevelt, Jefferson.
Yeah, this is actually pretty interesting.
Again, it's success. Do they have their policy goals and do they achieve them? They want to get a touchdown. Do they get the touchdown?
These guys didn't know you were such a progressive, Cash.
Yeah, I think we have very different metrics for our picks.
The pre-post presidency thing that Carter has been going up in the rankings because of all of this
slightly,
stuff.
Yeah. He's one of the better post presidents. Sometimes you ask, does Taft deserve credit for being a good, Chief Justice? It's an interesting question. You can ask, somebody like Eisenhower, beating Hitler, should that count? I don't know. Counts for me, but.
Yeah, I'm definitely including post and pre-presidential activity, but I think we all have a unique approach here.
Well, I think that's a good segue. I think I'm going to take Eisenhower here, guys.
Oh, see?
He's been going up in the rankings lately. I think it's
like number 5, yeah.
Yeah, I think, and a very, very underrated party manager also. One of these preemptive presidents, nobody had a tougher condition under which to serve. So I'm taking Ike.
And could you explain to the listeners what rankings you guys are referring to?
So that there's different organizations starting in 1948 with Life magazine, and today C-SPAN does one every time a president cycles out of office. There are organizations like Siena College; they do one every so many years. The New York Times has done them. And they ask panels, to rate presidential greatness per se, and so that's these ranking
The last rankings, was it political science?
Yeah.
They probably were the
Yeah,
worst
we've
I've
gotten involved
seen.
in that. The APSA
Yeah.
presidential PEP, whatever that is, presidential executive politics.
You have an article on it, don't you, Curt?
Oh, I've got the article on it.
Well, what's cool about Kurt's article, though, is that he predicted, like, 10 years out what would happen in these presidential rankings,
Yeah,
and then it turns
yeah.
out he was right about them.
Yeah. It would all go progressive, right? More and more.
Well, for example, when I was writing in 2012, it wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. I was writing before Obama was reelected. And so I did two calculations based. I said, if he doesn't get reelected, this is where he'll fall in the rankings. And if he gets reelected and he's considered somewhat transformative, this is where he'll fall. And, I was about 2 spaces off, but he got reelected and is considered transformative. So you just plug it into a formula is what I found. You do a little regression analysis, as they say. And it's not hard to predict, actually, what the experts think about these presidents.
Yeah.
Well, if I may, I'm going to take Ronald Reagan for 2 reasons. One, won the Cold War, but the truer cause, I would say, would be to scoop this out from under Ben, who I'm thinking was probably right about to pick him.
I was sure I was going to get Reagan and Lincoln, and you scooped him. You suck. You did it just.
Well, that's too bad.
All right, now I had my pick ready. Now I'm going to look a little. Shane, I figured you'd pick,
Who'd you think I would pick?
Shane was always picking Reagan.
Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover.
You thought I'd pick Hoover?
Hoover. Well, Nixon, you'd stay.
Nixon's a great pick.
Go for the deplorables.
All right.
You got 2 picks here, Ben, right?
Yeah, I have 2 picks. Let's see. Well, I have a few zags, but I think I don't have to play my zags yet. James Madison.
As a president.
As a president, I think his conduct of the War of 1812 is underrated. We were considered to have won that war at the time, and Madison was celebrated for having helped to win that war. The burning of D.C. is overstated. It was just a kind of swampland. There wasn't really anything to burn, and it was weird that the British zagged over there and burned swampland. So I think, he's often blamed for that, but I think that's overstated. And I kind of like his Whiggishness, his willingness to defer to Congress to a significant extent. So I was thinking about how maybe the most impressive presidents are impressive presidents who also act like Whigs, in a certain way. And, and Madison also, I have an article several years ago about how Madison refrained from using the War of 1812 as a reason to expand presidential power. And I think that's impressive. So not on the basis of Madison's Federalist Papers, but entirely on the basis of Madison's presidency. I'm taking Madison.
Great. What's your next pick?
Yeah.
Oh, I get one more. Oh gosh. The Reagan thing really. I had it ready. Coolidge. Coolidge. This was a zag, but he's still on the board. I might as well. Yeah. I mean, not only Coolidge is interesting. He was an activist governor in Massachusetts, and then once he became president, exercised very little presidential power. So the same. He thought states could be activist, but that the federal government shouldn't be. Again, I like the Whiggishness of Coolidge. He also started to push for things like civil rights legislation. He passed, I just saw this today, the act that made all Native American citizens. So I can't remember what the name of it is, but Coolidge passes that act, and plus he's from Massachusetts, so I like that. And I think he actually dedicated my parents' family farm in Northampton, in Hatfield, Massachusetts, when he was the mayor of Northampton. So yeah.
I love how
Coolidge.
Ben's coming off like an aristocrat in this whole thing. Like my
Bring
last
up his middle
name
name, it's
is
just game over.
Adams.
Oh my god.
Only Jewish aristocrat ever.
Well, I'm gonna have to take Grant, I think. And it really is more of a pre and post. I know very little about his presidency, if I'm being completely honest. I've always been enchanted by a painting of Ulysses S. Grant in the Round Robin Bar at the Willard Hotel, which is where supposedly the term lobbying originates, from people hanging out in the lobby waiting for Grant. But it's a picture of Grant on a camel in front of the pyramids, and that was how I learned he's our basically best traveled president. He left, and he was the first president to circumnavigate the globe after his presidency. But even better than that, I love that he had the gall to come back after 3 years of just screwing around and try to go for a third term, which he did not get the nomination for. And he's just someone I'd love to have a drink with.
You know,
So would he like to have a drink with you?
Kurt's article actually predicted
Interesting
Grant's
point
rise.
on this. I've actually been researching a paper on Grant. I did a little bit last summer with the help of a grad student doing the actual work, of course. But I was guiding it because Grant's one of these guys in the presidential rankings. In 1948, Grant was considered the second worst president. All right, and that was the initial poll, mainly by progressive scholars back in the day. And he's actually risen back up to be right sort of in the middle of the pack now, around 22nd or something like that. So the paper is about, his legacy and tracing it through, bibliographies and things like that, but also why he's gone from worst to, middling at least now. So he's an interesting guy.
There was a kind of classism in the rejection of Grant, wasn't there, for a while? I mean, I'm thinking of Henry Adams' autobiography of himself. Talks about Grantism, and it's definitely there's a classist rejection of Grant as something
You hit the nail on the head. As far as that is, if you look at the presidential biographies of Grant, he was a rock star after the Civil War. Of course, he's like Ike is. These great West Pointers. They win the war, and besides Lincoln, he's the second most responsible guy for winning the Civil War. So he had a great reputation until Henry Adams' book came out, and then it craters. And I think progressives after FDR also picked any chance they could to beat up on Republican presidents. So Harding is the worst president, and Grant is the second worst, both because of scandals in their administrations, largely.
Can I go, Shane?
Yeah, go for it.
I am running to the podium as fast as I can to get this pick in. I'm taking Harry Truman, who I think is in the running for fourth best president. I think he's so good. He's going down in the rankings, I think, because people are starting to think that maybe dropping the atomic bomb wasn't the right decision. But in the mid-1940s, that is exactly what everybody in the Allied forces wanted him to do to end the war. And he did some great things for civil rights as well.
Interesting. Anyone want to push back on that, or?
I should have.
That was what I was.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I should have taken him prior.
I was curious
Coolidge.
what those reactions were.
Yeah,
I missed him on the board.
He's a top 10 guy usually.
Yeah.
So
He also starts the Cold War, in a certain way had the foresight to understand that Soviet Union was a real threat and started and articulates the grounds to the Cold War. So,
and he's pretty impressive in that he escapes a really bad institutional situation between 47 and 49, that he's got an all-Republican Congress, he's unelected, and somehow he manages to escape it and win election in his own right, get Democrats back into majorities in Congress. So pretty impressive for a guy who didn't even know we had the atomic bomb when he became president, and then does some good things.
Yeah.
Bridge stole one there.
Yep.
Okay, Cash or Jordan.
All right. Well, then the next one, since Dave stole my pick, I'll take James K. Polk.
Oh,
Okay.
oh.
Yeah.
I'd argue the most successful one-term president we've ever had. So successful, he didn't even bother to run for a second term because he did everything he wanted to do. Got the
Oh,
South.
he wanted to run again. They wouldn't let him.
Well, I mean, once you get the Southwest, you beat Mexico, and you get the Northeast all settled, what is there to do? He brings us from sea to shining sea. That's James K. Polk. And great There Will Be Giants song about James K. Polk, which is very catchy.
This show is proudly sponsored by the Jack Miller Center for Teaching America's Founding Principles and History. The American experiment put into practice the ideas of freedom, equality, tolerance, and human dignity. These principles, and the history that follows from them, form the backbone of the American political tradition. For the last 20 years, JMC has been working to preserve and promote that tradition through a variety of programs at the college and K-12 levels. Through their American Political Tradition Project, JMC has partnered with more than 1,000 scholars at over 300 college campuses across the country, especially through their annual summer institutes for graduate students and recent PhDs. The Jack Miller Center is also working with thousands of K-12 educators across the country to help them better understand America's founding principles and history and teach them effectively in order to better educate the next generation of citizens. JMC has provided thousands of hours of professional development for teachers all over the country, reaching millions of students with improved civic learning. Finally, the Jack Miller Center provides support for civic professionals at all levels through digital tools and resources, such as their Context US Document Database and this podcast. If you care about American education and civic responsibility, you'll want to check out their work, which focuses on reorienting our institutions of learning around America's founding principles. To learn more or get involved, visit jackmillercenter.org. All right, Nichols?
All right. Well, I got two in a row here, so I'm going to go two different directions here. I think with my third round pick, because it might be controversial for this group, but it allows me to set up a discussion I'd like to have, and that's about assassinated presidents that also happen to be progressive. So I'm going to take JFK next. The question I have, and I've proven this out in my research, is there's some factor that only Abraham Lincoln and JFK share in the history of these presidential ranking games. And I don't know what it is, except for the fact that McKinley, who I'm going to pick next, and Garfield don't actually get this same bonus. So I don't know if it's fair, but it's interesting how presidential rankers and raters over time have given both Lincoln and JFK sort of a benefit of the doubt. In other words, that, Lincoln's second term was going to turn out well. I'm not sure it would have. I don't know what would have happened in JFK's second term, but he's certainly given credit as if it was going to go great. So I'm picking JFK, and I'll let you guys pick him apart now.
I think it's just the romanticism of it. I think the romanticism of winning the Civil War and being able to reconstruct the Union, and then JFK and the new frontier and Camelot, and it died before it really got running. I think that's what they're credited for.
Well, would
you're
JFK
right. It's
be remembered?
What could have been.
Would JFK be remembered if he hadn't been shot? I mean, it seems like Lincoln would be remembered if he hadn't been shot. But JFK, it's harder to say.
What's the argument for Garfield not being remembered that he was shot? If you go back and look at the newspapers at that time, it was a huge national tragedy. People reacted to that the same way they reacted to JFK. They just don't remember it anymore. So that's
there's something about the television and seeing it happen. I think that really.
Sorry, go ahead, Shane.
It's just such a visceral. You know what I mean?
When I think to the amount of time, right? Because Garfield was only in office for 6 months before he died, and even less than. I think he got shot 3 months in, and then he spent 3 months dying, which
sounds about right.
Isn't great. So I think Garfield had a lot of potential, but then he wasn't in the game long enough to even think oh wow, yeah, he's really got it. Whereas I think people look at JFK and think, oh, that's
right.
Your Cuban Missile.
All right, well, I'm going to switch to my fourth pick then. We can keep talking about this because he's also assassinated. McKinley, we're going to take him off the board. And he served a whole administration, got reelected, fought a successful war, was the first imperialist president, shall we say, in the Spanish-American War, created the modern money-driven political election, is now considered by many to be perhaps the first modern president. Also shot, overshadowed by my first-round draft choice, though, his vice president, Teddy Roosevelt.
All right.
McKinley was next on my board, so
Same here, Curt.
All right, Jordan.
I'll take James Monroe, the only president other than Washington to win election without opposition. The president during the era of good feelings. So one party system that Jefferson helped inaugurate, comes through in Monroe's administration, gets us through the Missouri crisis, buys Florida. So a lot of big things happening during Monroe's tenure, and without much political opposition to speak of. And also a really great cabinet. I think after Washington and maybe Jefferson, one of the best cabinets that presidents have had, with John Quincy Adams, Secretary of State, or the best Secretary of State, John C. Calhoun, whatever you want to say about him. Otherwise, does it kind of reorganizes the War Department as Secretary of War. So very solid powerhouse cabinet.
Wonderful. David?
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the last reconstructor on the board. I'm going to take Barack Obama.
Barack Obama.
Does he count as a reconstruct?
Yeah,
Only in the world of Nichols, but
I think the Nichols world.
Okay, no thoughts on Obama?
No thoughts on Obama. Just want him.
It's so obvious you don't need an argument.
So he, much like Reagan, he changed politics and what we talk about. So before Reagan, we didn't really think about tax cuts. And after Obama, you really can't talk about politics without mentioning healthcare. So just really transformed the way that the national agenda is set.
Okay. I guess it's me. I'm actually going to take John Quincy Adams. Mostly, it's sort of a broader affinity for him, and especially in terms of post-presidential action, I think this actually does matter in the context of the presidency. Going and taking on other roles, especially lower than the presidency, I really, I've always admired that, and I don't know. There's just something very. It shows a deeper commitment to, I think, citizenship, and also, it doesn't elevate the office more than it needs to be elevated. But I also think, just the fact that he's a boy during the founding, and he's, very early on, as an adolescent, acting as a diplomat and things like that. Like, in some way, he really just kind of embodies the founding for me as someone who lived through it in very formative years.
Okay, I'm going to take William Henry Harrison.
You're really going hard on these Whigs.
Yeah, really.
I was going to say, he's usually an 8th round draft choice.
Only he has the most impressive inaugural address there is. It's really long.
The longest, and it killed him anyway.
It's impressive. It's it states the Whig philosophy better than anyone else. That inaugural address, and he promised not to exercise a lot of presidential power once he was in his office, and he fulfilled his promise. So by dying, so I guess
maybe not voluntarily, I suppose.
I intended to take Reagan, but Shane stole him from me. So I'm now, I'm in a Whig situation.
And without Harrison, you would have never had Tyler, and Jordan's book would have, come on.
We needed Harrison for Jordan's book to exist.
That's true.
So I'm thinking of taking Ford next.
Well, you are next.
Oh, I am next. I don't know if I actually want to take Ford next. Yeah, just I was reading. I didn't know much about Benjamin Harrison, but I was reading some about him, and I was fairly impressed. A kind of I like presidents who can be aggressive in their foreign policy while also restrained in certain way in their domestic. In other words, who exercise the authority of the president most clearly. So, and plus, then I have the grandfather and the grandson on my team, and they might fight better because they're relatives. So, all right.
I'm pretty torn on this one. I think I'm completely unsure what. No, yeah, okay. I'm gonna take Donald Trump. I just think I have to.
You already have Nixon. So.
Nixon, Trump, Reagan.
Shane, you would win the scandal in my class.
Yeah, I mean, legendary in terms of scandals. And it remains to be seen, but I do think, is going to be remembered as, for better or for worse, like transforming the Republican Party as we know it. So, yeah, I don't know.
Shane's planning to advertise this podcast to the QAnon crowd, apparently.
Well, you got the Whig team, Ben. And
the Whig team. Shane's got the crazies.
Oh, Reagan's crazy now?
Well, Grant, Nixon, Trump, Reagan.
Okay, David?
I'm going to take William Howard Taft. And not just because of his stuff as Supreme Court Justice. I think he was a very good president as well. I appreciate how he tried to expand democracy, really tried to get more people to vote, which I think is always good.
Okay. Jordan?
I'll take LBJ, Lyndon Johnson, just to keep going on this progressive train that Ben accuses me of being on.
Oh, look.
FDR and now LBJ.
Proof is in the pudding.
So with Johnson, I mean, like with the others, very successful in getting his initiatives through Congress, obviously with Civil Rights Act of 1964, Voting Rights Act of 1965, Medicare, Medicaid, the Great Society programs. Obviously, Vietnam, he probably would have gone earlier, except for Vietnam really drags him down. But domestic policy, it's hard to find another president who's as successful in making these major legislative and domestic changes than LBJ.
He's definitely got that iron in him, as Lee Kuan Yew would say. I respect the choice. Curt?
All right. Well, I'm looking at my team here. I'm thinking I got some good quarterbacks. I have some of the skill position people. What I need is maybe some linemen now, and so I think since Taft's already off the board, I'm going to go with the second heaviest president, Grover Cleveland. You can get. Do I get two of him because he's both the 22nd and the 24th? Because that would be a nice bookend pair. That'd hold down the whole right side of my line. But in seriousness, I mean, Cleveland's also one of these guys that, I don't know. He's reputation is not held up very well over time. But, the 1932, Nobel Prize winning book was about Grover Cleveland's presidency. So there was a time when people thought he was okay.
Great. And you're up again.
Oh, I am. Who's left? Ooh, goodness. I should probably go with Wilson's up there, but I just don't know. I think he's got that tricky leg thing or whatever's going on with him. I can't pick him. I'm gonna go. Oh, Jews, I have to. Okay, give me Woodrow Wilson for 200 points or whatever. I know. You can still have Taylor though, Bridge. Dave. So I don't know what to say about Wilson. Quite honestly, this is the one that I always make my TA lecture on when I do my presidency class. So I don't know anything about Wilson.
That's
Well, the
Not
thing is,
true. Partial.
this late in the draft, what you're looking for, you're not looking for overall greatness. You're looking for traits, right? Just one or two
Right,
things.
yeah.
And
One or
he
two.
did win World War One. He was committed to
Yeah,
stopping
he's
the
a good
German
special
Empire.
teamer. I mean,
Exactly.
And there's the
Yeah.
whole rhetorical presidency thing,
yeah, there's
As
that. I mean,
As a Tula student, shouldn't you?
I have to.
Yeah, I was wondering when he'd get picked. Jordan?
Well, with John Quincy off the board, I'll take the dad, John Adams. Put in a very difficult position coming after Washington. So I think Adams really does a lot to institutionalize the presidency. So it's not as dependent on Washington's own character. He kind of shows that this thing can last through. Although he, of course, is quite notable himself for his revolutionary activity. And he also he has a quasi-war with France, but then he gets a peace treaty that secures peace and makes the Louisiana Purchase possible. So I think Adams is very much underrated as a president, and kind of a good bridge between Washington and Jefferson, who might be more notable, but Adams, I think, does a lot institutionally and constitutionally, as well as being successful in at least some of his initiatives.
I love Adams. He's always been one of my favorite founders. Do you think when you say, he helps to institutionalize it, it seems like it's good from an institutional perspective that we have, in between, we have Washington and then in between him and Jefferson, these two just absolute studs. We get a guy who's kind of lame. I think that is probably helpful for the, in sort of, I don't know.
To get a guy who's nicknamed his rotundity. Yeah.
I thought Paul Giamatti did a great job with him, though. I mean, that sold me on him.
Yeah. Great HBO series. I should have included that in my assessment. Who else? It's an HBO series of him.
Wonderful. Well, that's a great choice.
Ben,
David?
just letting you know, Magic Johnson has an HBO series too. So there's. Oh, gee, it's me.
Yeah.
Magic Johnson. Is that who?
I'll take Magic. Wow. Let's see. What do we got? I'm going to take Bill Clinton. I think
I had a feeling you were going to take Clinton.
Yeah.
Real rough start. I think he's got some healthcare deficiencies, but I think we've got that covered on my team. I think somebody else can cover him on that. Clinton's, his biggest achievements were workfare and NAFTA, and those were Republican initiatives. I think there's something to be said about the bipartisanship of his last 6 years.
Yeah, bring some charm into your lineup too. A little bit of saxophone. That's good. I am going to choose George W. Bush, mostly for the shoe dodge alone, I think. But yeah.
All right. I had two picks lined up. They were Clinton and Bush, and they were both just taken. So it's going to be a second for me to figure out who. Let's see. I'll take Ford. Ford, I think they took real courage to pardon Nixon, to try to settle the situation and settle down the country. I was recently texting with my mother, who's been crawling back toward Trump after being a huge Trumper, and then, turned on him on January 6th and is now moving back toward her. Anyway, I said that if Biden had any real courage, he would pardon Trump. And obviously he's not going to do that. But one of the points of the pardon power is to sort of settle the country. And, having the prosecution of a president leaves everything unsettled. So Ford's my guy. It's a real exercise of presidential authority that's impressive. So, and for my second pick, I got to do George H.W. Bush.
You took
really
both.
Impressive foreign policy. Very impressive foreign policy. What's that?
You took both of my next picks.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like, who's left on the board? Herbert Hoover, Herbert Hoover, Andrew
James
Johnson.
got him next.
Round out your board, Shane. So yeah, George H.W. Bush. I think it was hard to come after Reagan. It's the classic problem of the articulator. But I do think his foreign policy was impressive. So, and after all, at the end of the day, presidents have most authority in foreign policy. So perhaps that's how we should be judging them more than by anything else. I didn't do that, but perhaps we should.
Great. Yeah, I really don't know what to do with what's left.
You got to go Hoover, Shane.
You got to go Hoover?
It rounds out your
Sell me on Hoover.
whole team. I had no sale for Nixon though. So
I mean, Shane, you could take Jimmy Carter, and he could just like the rest of your team could kind of clown on him, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
You don't have a
Carter
water
would be a
boy
good
yet,
sport
so
about
I'm thinking right now I have like a really, like in terms of just hanging out with a group of people, it just sounds awesome. I don't know if JQA would be a bit of a buzzkill.
I think he's a buzzkill.
I think he probably is, but it's kind of fun to have a guy to pick on. It's kind of so
Why don't you go for Harding? You've got all these scandal-plagued presidents. You might as well just go.
ooh, yeah, that's
true.
thematically fit.
But the real, who's the best drinker there? Because in a way you have the best. I don't. Although I don't think Trump's much of a drinker.
Trump does not drink.
Pierce was an alcoholic.
Really?
George
Was he an alcoholic while he was in office?
Yes, his son was decapitated in front of him on a train riding to Washington, D.C., and it had a bad effect on him.
Andrew Johnson gave his vice presidential inaugural speech intoxicated. So
okay, I'm choosing Johnson.
George W. Bush didn't drink, but it sounds like he was quite a drinker as a young man.
It sounds like he had a lot of fun in college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Andrew Johnson the most anti-reconstructive president ever?
Probably.
well, isn't that what?
Well, if you listen to Toulis, he's the closest one who knew what the South would tolerate, and eventually the Reconstruction was settled on terms that Johnson was arguing for.
Is that right? Is that Toulis' argument?
That's Toulis's argument with Johnson.
Interesting.
Yep.
All right, guys. I think there's no surprise. Ben, you're taking presidents who act like wigs. Well, I'm taking an actual wig. Zachary Taylor, old rough and ready. And I think he avoided a huge crisis. Ben, you talk about presidents are charged with resolving crises, but Zach Taylor, by bringing California into the Union as a free state, I think pretty much stopped secession for another 10 years.
You were planning on taking him the whole time. You just knew he'd be on the board late.
Well, I had to wait till the end, just...
That was strategic.
That was your answer when we asked you our signature question when you were on, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have taken him just because he died in office, and I got a couple of those already, so,
He wasn't shot, though,
No, he ate too many cherries, I think, right? Isn't that the story?
Yeah, 4th of July celebration. Some senator gave like a 3-hour speech in 100-degree heat, and he ate these cherries that turned into an infection, and he died.
Not a good way to go, man.
No.
It's a good book like Presidential Deaths, all the way they all died.
Yeah.
I mean, who was it? Curt, you were saying one of the guys. Which guy was it that was sick? He was in the hospital for 3 months. Was that Arthur?
Oh, that was Garfield after he was shot. Yeah, he didn't expire right away. And it's because the doctors were sticking their unwashed hands inside his body to try to extract the bullet, and one of them dirty, nasty. They didn't have any idea about bacteria.
When there was one of them got assassinated, it was at the World's Fair, and they had an X-ray machine that they could have used.
McKinley.
Use it. That was it, McKinley.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh well,
Jordan, you're up.
Well, if Dave is going true to form, I'll go true to form. Do a Whig who got kicked out of the party. John Tyler, the first isolated president, first accidental president. Who comes in.
I knew you'd have your book back there on display back there.
Hey, if we're gonna be on YouTube, I want some free advertising. But Tyler, very constitutionally important. He obviously becomes president after William Henry Harrison dies, establishes the precedent that the vice president actually becomes the president rather than an acting president, which isn't constitutionalized till the 25th Amendment. So constitutionally very important. And I think really preserves the constitutional system, since you have all these Whigs in Congress who want to forcibly reduce the president and the president's power and really take away his constitutional authority. Tyler pushes back on that. That's why he gets kicked out of the party. But he preserves the office, preserves the institution at a time when it was really under quite a bit of threat from Whigs in Congress. So very important there. And of course, very successful. Well, maybe not very is too strong a word, but somewhat successful in his policy initiatives, annexes Texas, things like that. So, John Tyler.
All right.
All right. Who's left? Oh man, this is when you get down to the slim pickings. I do a version of this in my class where I have the students, they just get to pick one president and we do a draft like this, but as soon as they come off the board, this is who they write their paper on, just so I don't have to read, 34 papers on Lincoln every semester. So we spread them out this way, and now I know how the last student feels. They're going, oh man, do I want to go with Van Buren just because he's the best left? I mean, is that possible? So I'm going with the little magician Van Buren. Just because I already have Jackson, and he's the Svengali of his age, really. I mean, this is pre-presidency stuff. But if you like, your Karl Rove sorts, there you go.
I mean, he built the party system.
And as we all know, the expression "okay" refers to Van Buren because he's old Kinderhook. And so, politically speaking, are you okay? I'm okay because I stand for old Kinderhook.
That's actually pretty incredible.
Yeah, just for trivia.
I'm a big fan of people who influence language. I think there's been a lot of Trumpisms have very much entered.
George W. Bush, man, you really got the team, don't you, Shane?
That's good stuff. Okay, any high-level thoughts here?
High-level thoughts.
I enjoy everybody taking the president Ben was about to take.
Yeah, that was good.
That's why we let him go first, so he got one.
I got one of mine. Yeah, well, I'd say Shane definitely gets the all crazy. Maybe the most fun, but they also.
I think 100% the most fun. I mean, that was kind of my. That was a big part of the angle.
I got a pretty old team here. I'm not sure. We're ready to win now because we're not lasting too long.
That's a win.
When
now
Wilson's
team.
your young man on your team. I guess I have JFK, but
I don't know, guys. I think I'd put my team up against y'all's. I really would. I'm very
What are they
satisfied.
competing in? This is what I'm confused about.
I don't know. We could say football. Just a random.
So, David, at this point, like if you were to do this with class, you would do what now? You would send these off for ranking and analysis across the various metrics?
Yeah, I tell my students I'm going to send it off to experts, and I mean it's kind of a lie because all I do is send it to Curt and Jordan. So,
So now we're the experts judging our own team.
yeah, you got to get Ben and Shane involved in this next time. I mean,
Shane, you want me to send this to my students? See how they grade us out?
That would be fun.
And do you set it up? Do you set it up such that all the presidents are chosen, or do you have stragglers like we do?
I do one more round, and then that's it.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's some leftovers. Yeah.
I'd say Bridge has the most progressive team.
I guess I do, huh?
Yeah. 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 It's
Jordan's got
interesting
some
that-
stuff. Jordan's got some. He's got some heavy hitters for progressives.
Yeah.
Given that Biden was ranked 10th or something like that in the recent greatness poll, he's not even chosen.
He's ranked 10th.
I think that's an overstatement.
That's about right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's right as far as an evaluation, but it's where he's being ranked.
That's where he's
right
at. Okay.
I think Shane, what do you think about Obama as the 10th best president ever, or Biden rather?
Well,
I mean,
if you
early to
listen
tell.
his press secretary, he's doing very well, and the economy is, getting back on track. I mean, I can't. That's amazing to me, just given that foreign policy would seem to be such a large component of judging presidents, and I mean, it's just been a disaster.
One thing that's interesting is after Trump, you see George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush getting better scores.
Yeah.
The sort of retconning of George W. Bush, who used to be like, for leftists in this country, he was practically Hitler, and now he's just a nice old man who paints.
Yeah, Stanley Fish. I remember an article Stanley Fish wrote near the end of the George W. Bush presidency, arguing that was going to happen to him. That George W. Bush, everyone would gradually forget that he was supposed to be hated, and he'd just become old Georgie, who everyone had a fondness for. He's got a nice smile. He's a nice guy. It seems like a great guy.
Well, that's fair to say, but I mean, so Bush, left the presidency with like 31% approval rating, which is what Truman left, and Truman's really rebounded in the eyes of the sort of these evaluators, and I think W, in some sense, there's just been worse things to compare him to, I guess, in the evaluators' minds, and so I don't know though. It's strange to me that you can have, Bush be the worst, Republican ever, and then Romney can be the worst ever, and then McCain is the worst ever, and at some point, I don't know.
Isn't that a reason why maybe Republicans went to Trump? Is you can only claim that the Republican candidate is Hitler for so long until somebody just goes, well, you're going to call everybody that, so let's just get the craziest guy we can find and put him.
I think that's part of it. I think that was part of the Trump appeal.
To what degree? I mean, the party didn't choose Trump. Trump took the party.
I just mean Republican voters. If everybody they choose is being the worst person who's ever lived, then at some point that attack doesn't work anymore on voting preferences.
Well, I always joke that any party that nominates Jeb Bush to be its candidate deserves to have Trump be it, and any party that nominates Hillary Clinton deserves Trump to be president. So.
Well, guys, thanks. I don't know. Did anyone have any closing thoughts? This was fun. I mean, I think this is a great way to. I learned a lot of tidbits about various presidents. It's interesting to see the way people pick, but also the way we can. And Curt, it really sounds like, you're kind of in the weeds on these rankings and stuff. It's an interesting phenomenon to me that like the way reputations are rehabilitated and the way people, fade into obscurity or fade into, or sort of, we have this tendency to rehabilitate based on the current day.
Well, it goes the other way now too. So one of the other things is guys like Andrew Jackson and Polk, because quite frankly, in my opinion, because Trump used them as touchstones recently. Yeah. Their rankings have gone down. Jackson used to be the 5th or 6th greatest president. Now he's the 21st greatest president or something. And so something's off in these polls sometimes, right? It's they're being used as political grist mills for saying other things.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Well, Ben, any closing thoughts?
No, I kind of want to send it to Bridges' class and have them evaluate our rankings. Yeah.
I'm happy to do it, and I'll report back, guys.
Yeah. see who won. Yeah. I don't really have much of a closing thought except that, no.
Well, guys, thanks so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun. I think this, I don't know, it opens up a kind of a new sort of type of episode we might do. I wonder what other sort of activities like this, we could pursue. But thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shane.